Welcome to Uncut, Gems and Their Stories. I'm Paige. How are you? Whether you're here to unwind, learn something new, or just escape reality for a little while, you're in the right place. Because this is the podcast where we dig into the raw, unpolished stories hidden inside the world's most incredible gemstones. So grab a drink, light one up, get comfortable, and let's uncover another story. Welcome to Uncut. What if I told you that one of the strongest symbols of love started out as nothing more than carbon, the same element that's in charcoal, the graphite inside your pencil, and even you? Not exactly romantic, but somehow that ordinary element became the world's most desired gemstone. A stone that kings fought over, empires traded, advertisers built billion-dollar industries around. And today, 90% of American brides receive one in an engagement ring. Most people think that's because diamonds have always symbolized love, but that's not actually the story. Their story is so much stranger than that. It's a story that begins billions of years before there were humans, before there were dinosaurs, before flowers, before almost every mountain you've ever seen. Because long before diamonds represented forever, they had already survived in eternity. Welcome back to Uncut with Paige, the show where we get just a little nerdy, occasionally a little sidetracked, and uncover the incredible stories hiding inside the world's most fascinating gemstones. I'm Paige, and today we're talking about the king of gemstones, the one everybody thinks they already know, diamonds. Now, I'll be honest, before I got into gemology, I thought diamonds were kind of boring. I know, don't come for me. They're clear, they're expensive, people propose with them, end of story. Or at least that's what I thought. Then I started learning where they actually come from. And I realized diamonds have one of the most unbelievable journeys of any gemstone on Earth. And honestly, their geological story is just as incredible as the marketing campaigns that made the world fall in love with them. So let's rewind. Way, way, way back, about 3 billion years. Imagine standing on Earth, except it wouldn't look anything like Earth today. No forests, no birds, no mammals, no humans wondering if Mercury is in retrograde. Just an incredibly young planet, still cooling, still changing, still violently alive. Now leave the surface behind. Keep going down, past where earthquakes happen, past the deepest mine humans have ever dug, past the deepest hole we've ever drilled. Keep going. About 100 miles beneath your feet. You're now inside Earth's mantle. Temperatures here can reach over 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Pressures are more than 50,000 times greater than what we're experiencing right now. It's an environment so extreme that if we could somehow stand there, we wouldn't survive long enough to realize we were dead. And yet this is where diamonds are born. Here's the craziest part. Diamonds aren't made from some magical rare ingredient. They're made from carbon. That's it, just carbon. The exact same element that's in barbecue charcoal oil or a pencil lead. The difference isn't what they're made of, it's how they're made. Down here, carbon atoms are squeezed under unimaginable pressure while being heated to incredible temperatures. Instead of forming soft layers like graphite, the atoms lock together into an incredible, rigid, three-dimensional crystal structure. That tiny difference changes everything. You have the hardest natural material on Earth. A crystal so durable that almost nothing in nature can scratch it. A crystal capable of bending and reflecting light with unbelievable brilliance once it's cut. All because the atoms decided to hold hands in a different pattern. Nature is weird, and I love it. But here's what really blows my mind. Making a diamond is only half the story. Because after all that, after surviving conditions that sound more like another planet than our own, most diamonds never make it to the surface, ever. They're trapped deep inside the Earth, sometimes for billions of years. Imagine spending longer underground than complex life has even existed. Only to never be seen by anyone. It almost feels unfair. Thankfully, Earth has a habit of being spectacularly violent. Millions of years ago, massive volcanic eruptions blasted upward from deep inside the mantle. These weren't the volcanoes we're familiar with today. They were incredibly rare eruptions that shot magma toward the surface at astonishing speeds. As that magma raced upward, it ripped pieces of the mantle away with it. And hidden inside some of those chunks were diamonds. Without these ancient volcanic eruptions, every natural diamond on Earth would still be buried deep beneath our feet. Every engagement ring, every famous museum diamond, every crown jewel, every family heirloom would still be locked inside the mantle where no humans could ever find it. When you really think about it, finding a natural diamond is almost absurdly unlikely. First, the carbon has to crystallize under exactly the right condition. Then it has to survive for millions or even billions of years. Then it has to be caught by one of those incredibly rare volcanic eruptions, and that eruption has to cool without destroying it. The rocks have to survive erosion, and then a human actually has to find it. The odds are ridiculous, which is why high-quality natural diamonds are genuinely rare. Not because there aren't a lot of diamonds in the earth. There definitely are. But because almost none of them ever complete that impossible journey. And honestly, I think that's beautiful. Every natural diamond is basically a geological miracle that somehow beat impossible odds just to exist where we could find it. Of course, the first people who found them had absolutely no idea any of this was happening. No one knew about Earth's mantle, no one knew about crystal structures, no one knew about carbon. They just found these little strange crystals that couldn't be scratched, couldn't be broken, and sparkled unlike anything they'd ever seen. If you found something like that 4,000 years ago, what would you think it was? The ancient answer civilizations came up with actually makes a lot of sense. They believed they had found something from the gods, and that's exactly where our story heads next. Because thousands of years ago, in the rivers of ancient India, humanity met diamonds for the very first time. So how does a strange crystal become the most valuable gemstone in history? That's where the real story begins. Can you imagine finding something that no one can explain? If you're walking along a river in ancient India, and mixed in with the pebbles, you notice a crystal unlike anything you've ever seen. It's transparent, it catches the sunlight, it won't scratch, it won't break. You don't know what it is, but you know it's different. That's exactly what happened nearly 4,000 years ago. Long before there were jewelry stores, long before engagement rings or luxury brands, people in India began discovering natural diamonds in riverbeds and streams. And for more than 1,000 years, India was the only known source of diamonds on Earth. Think about that for a second. Every diamond worn by a king, every diamond traded across continents, every diamond admired by emperors started in one place, ancient India. And because no one understood geology or chemistry, or even what a crystal really was, people did what humans have always done. They told stories. The Greeks gave diamonds the name adamas, meaning unbreakable or invincible. That's a pretty fitting name. Because if you were living over 2,000 years ago, this thing practically seemed immortal. Iron couldn't damage it, stone couldn't damage it, fire didn't seem to destroy it. It must have felt like it broke the rules of nature. And once people believe something breaks the rules, the myths aren't far behind. The Greeks believed diamonds were tears of the gods. Others believed they were fragments of stars that had fallen to earth. The Romans took things even further. Some believed Cupid's arrows, the very arrow that made people fall hopelessly in love, were tipped with diamonds. Now, whether that's true, I don't know. Cupid never returned my emails, but I absolutely love that image. Because even thousands of years ago, before diamonds symbolized marriage, people already connected them with something eternal. Love, strength, power. Almost as if the stone itself carried those ideas. The Roman scholar Pliny the Elder even wrote that diamonds were the most valuable, not only of precious stones, but of all things in this world. That's an incredible statement, especially considering at this point, people hadn't even seen what diamonds are truly capable of. Because here's something that surprised me when I first learned. For centuries, diamonds looked kind of underwhelming. I know you're probably thinking, what do you mean? We've all seen diamonds sparkling under jewelry store lights, throwing rainbows everywhere, blinding everyone with a 10-foot radius. Ancient people never saw that. Not because the diamonds couldn't sparkle, but because no one knew how to unlock their brilliance. Remember how I said earlier, diamonds are the hardest natural material on Earth? Well, that turns out to be both their greatest strength and their biggest problem. They're so hard that people couldn't figure out how to cut them. Imagine discovering the hardest material on Earth and realizing you have absolutely no tools capable of shaping it. For hundreds of years, diamonds were worn exactly as they came out of the ground. Little octahedral crystals. Cloudy, rough, and beautiful. But nothing like the stones we recognize today. It wasn't until around the 1300s that craftsmen finally began experimenting with cutting diamonds. And honestly, cutting might be giving them too much credit. The earliest techniques were incredibly simple, mostly just polishing the natural faces or removing tiny imperfections. But then people realized a diamond wasn't beautiful because it was shiny. It was beautiful because of what happened inside it. When light enters a properly cut diamond, it bounces around inside the crystal before shooting back out toward your eyes. That's where the brilliance comes from. The flashes of white light, the rainbow colors, that almost electric sparkle. The diamond had always been capable of it. Humans just hadn't figured out how to reveal it yet. I think there's something poetic about that. Sometimes the potential is already there. It just takes someone to uncover it. As diamond cutting slowly improved across Europe, something else was changing too. The diamonds themselves, or rather where they came from. India's rivers had supplied the world for centuries, but eventually those deposits began running out. Then, in the early 1700s, gold miners in Brazil started finding diamonds mixed into the gravel of riverbeds. Almost by accident. Suddenly, the world's supply exploded. For more than 150 years, Brazil became the center of the diamond world. And just when people thought they'd found the greatest source imaginable, history said, hold my beer. Because in the late 1800s, a discovery in South Africa would completely transform the diamond industry forever. Not just because there were more diamonds, but because someone realized if you could control the supply, you could influence what the entire world believed they were worth. And that's where this story takes an unexpected turn. Because up until now, everything we've talked about has been shaped by nature. The earth made the diamonds, volcanoes delivered them, civilizations built myths around them, and the next chapter was written by people. And believe it or not, it would change the meaning of a diamond more than billions of years of geology ever did. Next, we're heading to South Africa, where one company and 4 unforgettable words would convince the entire world that forever comes in a little velvet ring box. So we left off in the late 1800s. Diamonds had already traveled an incredible journey. They'd formed more than 100 miles beneath the Earth's surface, survived billions of years underground, been carried upward by violent volcanic eruptions, discovered in rivers in India, worn by kings, admired by emperors, and slowly transformed into the sparkling gemstone we recognize today. But what happens next would change diamonds forever. Ironically, it had nothing to do with geology. In 1866, a young boy named Erasmus Jacobs was playing near the Orange River in South Africa when he picked up an unusual stone. His family thought it looked pretty, so it sat around the house for a while. Eventually, someone suggested having it examined, and that little pebble turned out to be a 21-carat diamond. News spread like wildfire. Within a few years, prospectors flooded into South Africa. Then came one of the biggest diamond discoveries in history, Kimberley. Almost overnight, the world realized something. There were a lot more diamonds than anyone had imagined. Now that sounds like a good thing. More diamonds should mean more people can enjoy them, right? Well, not exactly. Because here's the problem. Luxury only feels luxurious if it's rare. Imagine if tomorrow every beach in the world suddenly washed ashore with perfect diamonds. They'd still be beautiful. They'd still be incredibly hard. But would they feel as special? Probably not. Their value would collapse overnight. That's the challenge the diamond industry suddenly faced. And one company would spend the next century solving that problem. Enter De Beers. Founded in 1888 by Cecile Rhodes, De Beers gradually gained control over an enormous portion of the world's diamond production. At one point, they controlled somewhere between 80 to 90% of all rough diamonds entering the global market. That's an almost unbelievable level of influence. By carefully managing how many diamonds entered the market, they helped prevent prices from collapsing despite increasing production. It was an extraordinary business strategy. But then everything changed. Because in the 1930s, the Great Depression hit, and people weren't buying luxury goods. They were trying to survive. Diamond sales plummeted, and suddenly even one of the most powerful companies in the gemstone industry had a serious problem. How do you convince people that something they don't actually need is something they absolutely must have? You don't sell the product, you sell the emotion. De Beers hired an American advertising agency called N.W. Ayer & Son. Their assignment wasn't to create a catchy slogan. It was much bigger than that. They needed to change culture itself. At the time, engagement rings weren't expected to have diamonds. Some did, most didn't. There was no rule, no tradition, no social expectation. The agency realized if they could connect diamonds with love itself, people wouldn't question buying them. Because who wants to put a price on forever? Then, in 1947, a copywriter named Frances Garrity was finishing an advertising campaign. Legend says she was exhausted. She'd been trying to come up with a tagline, and before going to bed, she scribbled 4 words onto a piece of paper. A diamond is forever. 4 words. That's it. No discounts. No sales pitch, no mention of quality, no mention of price, just an idea. And I think that's what makes it brilliant. Because the slogan didn't tell people to buy diamonds. It told people what diamonds meant. Diamonds don't wear away easily. They survive billions of years. They're incredibly difficult to destroy. They become the perfect metaphor for lasting love. The campaign wasn't built around jewelry. It was built around emotion. The advertisements rarely zoomed in on giant sparkly rings. Instead, they showed proposal, anniversary, couples growing old together, quiet moment. The diamond wasn't the hero of the advertisement. Love was. The ring was simply the proof. And people bought into it completely. Then the campaign became even more ambitious. The advertisements began suggesting that a man should spend 1 month's salary on an engagement ring. Later, that became 2 months. Now, I don't know about you, but if somebody told me exactly how much I'm supposed to spend on anything, I'd probably laugh. But somehow it worked. Not because it became a law, not because anyone forced people, but because once enough people believe something is tradition, it starts to feel like it always has been. That's probably the part that fascinates me the most. Culture isn't always ancient. Sometimes culture is invented. And by the early 1980s, more than 80% of American engagement rings featured diamonds. Before the campaign, that number had been around 10%. That's astonishing. Then De Beers took the same strategy around the world. Japan is probably the most dramatic example. In the 1960s, only a tiny percent of Japanese brides received diamond engagement rings. After years of carefully tailored advertising, that number skyrocketed. The company adapted the message for different cultures, connecting diamonds with commitment, family, legacy, and prosperity instead of simply copying American advertisements. It wasn't really about selling gemstones anymore. It was about selling a feeling. And honestly, whether you admire it or find it a little unsettling, you have to admit it's one of the greatest marketing campaigns ever created. Business schools still study it today. Advertising agencies still reference it because very few companies have ever changed human behavior on such a massive scale. Coca-Cola helped shape what Santa Claus looks like, and Apple changed how we think about technology. De Beers, they convinced generations of people that forever should sparkle. But every story has a chapter people would rather skip. Because while millions of couples were beginning their lives together with a diamond ring, another story was unfolding, far from the jewelry stores. A story of war, violence, exploitation, and a reminder that even something unimaginably beautiful can cast a very dark shadow. You know, I think that's what makes diamonds so fascinating. Not because they're expensive or because celebrities wear them, not because they're beautiful. It's because every diamond has two stories, the one that we see and the one that we don't. The one we see is easy, a proposal, a wedding, an anniversary, a family heirloom that's been passed down for generations. Those are beautiful stories. But every once in a while, the jewelry industry has to confront the stories we'd rather not think about. Stories that happen long before a diamond ever reaches a velvet box. During the 1990s, the world started hearing a new phrase, conflict diamonds, or as they're more commonly known, blood diamonds. These weren't fake diamonds or lower quality. They were real, natural, beautiful. But they were mined in regions controlled by armed rebel groups and sold to finance wars across parts of Africa. Countries like Sierra Leone, Angola, and the Dominican Republic of Congo became tragically linked to a trade that helped fund violence, forced labor, and unimaginable human suffering. It's difficult to reconcile. How can something formed by nature over billions of years become part of something so destructive? The answer is that the diamond didn't choose. People did. And that's an important distinction. A diamond isn't ethical or unethical, it's just carbon. It's what humans do with it that gives it meaning. As public awareness grew, the industry couldn't ignore it anymore. In 2003, governments and industry leaders created something called the Kimberley process. And the goal was simple: prevent conflict diamonds from entering the legitimate international market by requiring certification showing where rough diamonds originated. Did it solve everything? No. Critics still point out loopholes. Illegal mining still exists. Smuggling still happens. And the Kimberley process made an enormous difference. But like most global problems, it isn't perfect. And there's something I think is really important to mention. Sometimes people hear about blood diamonds and think, okay, I'll just avoid diamonds. And I wish it were that simple, but because ethical questions aren't unique to diamonds, they're gemstone questions. Take Myanmar, for example. Myanmar produces some of the most sought-after rubies, sapphires, jade, and spinels in the world. But for decades, control over parts of the gemstone industry has been tied to military rule, armed conflicts, and serious human rights concerns. Even after international sanctions, many gemstones continue finding their way through neighboring countries before entering the global market. Which means even professionals sometimes struggle to determine exactly where a gemstone originally came from. It's one of those uncomfortable realities of gemology. Sometimes, the most beautiful things on Earth have incredibly complicated histories. And honestly, I don't tell you this to make you feel guilty, but I tell you because I think knowing the whole story matters. Whether you're buying a diamond, a ruby, or any other gemstone, asking questions is a good thing. Where did it come from? Was it mined responsibly? Does the jeweler know its origin? Those questions help create a better industry. Now, there's another chapter in the diamond story that changes everything. Lab-grown diamonds. And if you've ever considered, well, are they real? The answer is, yeah. Chemically, physically, and optically, the lab-grown diamond is a diamond. It's still pure carbon, arranged in exactly the same crystal structure as a natural diamond. Even most handheld diamond testers can't tell the difference. To determine whether a diamond formed deep inside the earth or inside a laboratory, gemologists use specialized equipment that examines microscopic growth patterns and internal characteristics left behind during formation. So, which one is better? Well, I don't think there's a universal answer, now is there? If someone loves the idea of owning a crystal that's about 3 billion years beneath the earth before making its way to the surface, that's pretty incredible. And if someone values the affordability or environmental considerations of a lab-grown diamond, that's incredible too. The important thing is knowing what you're buying, because the more information you have, the better decision you can make for yourself. And I actually think that's a pretty fitting way to end today's story. Because when we started this episode, I asked how an ordinary element became the world's greatest symbol of love. The answer isn't just geology. It's not just history. And it's definitely not just marketing. It's all of it. A diamond survives impossible conditions. It waits underground for billions of years and inspires myths. Scientists study it, kings fight over it, Advertisers transform it into a global tradition. And today, it's still evolving. Maybe that's why diamonds continue to fascinate us. Not because they're flawless, but because their story isn't. It's messy, complicated, beautiful, sometimes uncomfortable, just like history, just like people. So the next time you see a diamond, whether it's in a museum, a jewelry store, or on someone's hand, remember, you're not just looking at a gemstone. You're looking at one of the oldest objects you'll probably ever hold, a tiny piece of Earth's deep interior. And it's survived so much of a journey just to cross paths with you. I think it's pretty amazing. Thank you so much for hanging out with me for another episode of Uncut with Paige. If you've enjoyed today's story, I'd love if you'd share it with someone who thinks diamonds are just another rock, because clearly they're so much more than that. And maybe you're not sure if you want to go lab grown or natural, and maybe learning a little bit about the history and the questions you might want to ask can help you find the right answer for yourself. Until next time, thanks so much. Don't miss next week's episode. I'm sure it's going to be a gem.